Hi, welcome back to Interpersonal Communication. I'm Janie Turk. So, this is week 2. Whew, more stuff here. So, this week we're going to be focusing mostly on self concept and things that go along with that. So, we're going to be talking a little bit about words and meaning. We're going to get back to that topic when we get to language. We're going to talk about the 35 trait list, self fulfilling prophecies, the commitment essay that's been nagging a bunch of you, and we're going to start talking about social media. So for those of you who are following along on this course just for fun, I encourage you to try some of these activities. I think you'll find that you learn a lot by actually doing them. So here we go. So obviously, the words that we choose to use have impact. In terms of our self-concept and the part of this section of the textbook and the course that we're talking about, the words that we use to describe ourselves can be interpreted in so many different ways, and we could choose so many different words to say the same thing. In fact, we often say, one word if we're describing somebody we like, another word meaning the same behavior, but a different, more positive word if we're describing ourselves. And so I want you to be thinking about that as we talk about language, and then as we get to the 35 word list. So, first word that I thought about was demanding. If your toddler's being demanding, it might be funny, it might be a negative thing. They're expressing their wants. And actually, that's a huge growth milestone, right? We want to encourage our kids as they grow up to ask for what they need. And I think that's something that many of us struggle with, even as adults, is asking for what it is that we need, whether it's in interpersonal relationships or at work, being successful. I was very briefly in the military, and I want to say, maybe a week into basic training, there was a problem and our heat was shut off. And every single one of us was too afraid to report the fact that we had no heat. And so anonymously at the anonymous mail suggestion box, a whole bunch of people were like, we were freezing last night. And it was really frustrating for command because since we didn't ask for what we needed, they didn't have any idea there was a problem. So demanding usually has a negative connotation, but it's definitely something that could be seen in a positive light. How about meticulous? So that's somebody who pays attention to detail. Again, could be a positive thing, could be a negative thing. And certainly as URL citizens in this political climate, regardless of what country you live in, this political climate has lots of words being used that are intended to inflame and inspire and obfuscate, confuse. So words are being used very deliberately to manipulate you. I want you to think about how you're using words and the impact that manipulation has on yourself. So how about emotional? Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? Again, we're going to revisit this concept more when we talk about language, but I want you to be thinking about them in terms of the project that we're going to be doing. So when I upload this to the podcasting platform, I will upload these PDFs. So for those of you that are doing this class for fun and entertainment, enlightenment will have access to these documents. So the 35 trait list is a combination of traits that have been compiled over the years that look at things that can describe or not describe you in a way that everybody's using the same set of words. So it helps increase but not guarantee objectivity. So what you're going to do with this 35 trait list is if you're using it on paper, you're going to cut them up. Make lots of little boxes, scramble them up on the table. You're going to pick up one and you're going to go, okay, is this at the top of the list? This is like the most like me word of all the words. Is it somewhere in the middle? Is it somewhere in the bottom? And then you're going to repeat that process with every word until you get a nice row of all those words that describe you. The ones at the bottom will be the ones that are least like you or not like you at all. So you're going to do that real me column that you see there. And that real me column is the way that you see yourself today. Now, couple of key notes. Do not spend hours agonizing over this. Go with your first instinct. This list would be a little bit different if you did it in an hour, or if you did it last week, or if you did it right after you had a fight, or if you did it right after you got a raise. It'd be a little bit different. That's okay. We're going to account for that, so don't sweat it. No, you can't have ties. Choose. If they're very similar, randomly. Close your eyes, put one up a notch. But get your list down. So get all 35 words in there. Then take a beat. And then I want you to give that stack of papers, shuffle them up again so nobody knows what you did about you. Do not give the list that you see on the right hand of your screen. Do not give that to your partner, but get someone who knows you. It can be someone who knows you from very recently, or someone who's known you forever, but it needs to be someone who you are not going to be super defensive by their answers. So if you're currently going through a divorce or a breakup, don't give it to that partner. If you have a tense relationship with one of your kids, maybe not give it to them. Give it to somebody that no matter what they say, you're not going to be super defensive by. And you let them organize those traits according to how they see you. And a lot of my students report that they enjoy doing this back and forth. So they do them, you do you, and you switch. So once we do those first two columns, I want you to put on your calendar in, 10 days. I misspoke. Once you do the real me column on the outside and the me is seen by column on the other side, then I want you to switch and leave it for, like I said, about 10 days. And then do, without looking at what you wrote before or what your partner wrote, I want you to do your ideal version of yourself. But I want it to be the real ideal version, in that not a mythological person who you would be if you weren't you at all. If you were thinking a perfect person, I want you to be a realistic version of yourself. And then after you copy that list in, then I'm going to ask you to compare all three of the lists. I'll get to that in a minute. Before I move on, I want to talk a little bit about some of the words in here. One of my favorite stories is from a student who was a full-time employee, a mom, and going to school full-time at night as a single parent. So her house was a little bit of a mess, or maybe a lot of a mess, depending on how judgmental you're feeling. So she asked her 17-year-old son to do this list. And the number one word on his list was neat. And she's looking at this and looking around their house going, dude. And they had a great conversation about it. And he said, Mom, of all my friends' moms, of all the moms I know, you are the neatest mom out there. So even when we're using words that are intended to be more objective, we're going to have different ways of interpreting them, and that's okay. And after you've done the list, and after your friend has done the list, you're allowed to ask them if you can ask them without being defensive. So you can ask them, that's interesting to me. Why did you put that there? What were you thinking when you put that there? Understand that the lists are going to be impacted by recent events. So appropriate sense of humor is one that jumps out at me. If you just got busted telling a joke you should not have been telling, appropriate sense of humor might go lower down on the list by your partner who does this. And that's okay. It's not that there is an objective truth. It's that we're going to look at the way we see ourselves, the way we want to see ourselves, and the way other people see us. So again, you're going to do the 35 trait list. You're going to organize them according to how you see yourself. You're going to put that in the first column. You're going to give those lists, the stacks of words, to whoever you're asking to do this for you. And sometimes this question comes up. It does not have to be somebody in this class. And you're going to put those in the third column. And then you're going to put it away for 10 days or so you can think about it and forget about it. Forget about what you wrote before, and then do it with a fresh eye to who you think you want to be. So that's just a recap of how that's going to work. So go ahead and add it to your calendar in two places. Add it to your calendar when you're going to do it for the 35 word list, the real me, and add it to your calendar, like I said, about 10 days out. After you get all three lists done, I want you to do some analysis. And the way that you want to analyze these is you want to look and see where the words are in the list and look for ones that are more than 5 places apart. 5 places is pretty much the same spot. So if you put growing wiser with time as number 3 on your list, and someone else put it as number 7, and maybe in your ideal list you put it as number 2, those are all within that 5-point range. So you don't really need to identify those. But I encourage you to identify any that are 5 or more spaces apart to think about. And then do some analysis. So is this based on simply different definitions of the words? Is it based on the neat and neat version? For me, myself, I would put selfish as I'm describing myself because I've worked really hard to take care of myself. And so me describing the way that I want to be, that's going to be high on that list. But if you put it high on your list, I would interpret that as not generous. And my feelings would probably be a little bit hurt. So I would ask about that. Why did you put that there? What was your meaning there? So you can do some of that introspection, thinking about how you put it, you came to put it there on your list, and why it might be different on other people's lists, as well as ask them. Do take into account that we use words differently, and so we're going to get those different definitions. And things like appropriate sense of humor, for instance, we're going to have different definitions of appropriate for sure, right? And you're going to have different definitions in different settings. And like I said, you're going to look at ones that are more than 5 apart. Okay, so that was a 35-word list. I hope you understand what you're going to do with that, and I hope you have fun with it. We're not going to be doing that in a discussion board post because it's going to be something that we're just going to be talking about. Okay, on to self-fulfilling prophecies. Yes, I clicked the slides too quickly. Okay. Self-fulfilling prophecies, SFPs, there are 3 different types of them. At least I think that there are 3 different types of them. You can see if you agree. So the first type is the one that you're usually thinking of when you're talking about a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's when your belief influences your behavior. So if I go into a job interview and I'm like, there is no way they're going to hire me, I'm going to be sending all kinds of nonverbal messages to them that show my lack of confidence. And it doesn't guarantee they won't hire me, but it does make it harder for me to get that job. And by the same token, if I go in there going, man, I have got this, they definitely want me to work for them, that's also going to influence my behavior and influence my outcome. So what's not a self-fulfilling prophecy is if I say, oh man, if I wash my car, it's going to rain. If your belief doesn't have any impact on the weather, I promise you. But your belief does influence your behavior. And so in the job interview, it's one where you want to be thinking, how can I convince myself that this is going to be a successful outing? And I would say job interviews, because many of you are thinking about that, but also for tests. You go in for a test and you're like, I'm going to get this. You're more likely to be successful. I will never forget the student who told me that she was a bum magnet. And I think that we also definitely have self-fulfilling prophecies about romance. So who am I attracting and why am I attracting them? What do I believe about it? Do I believe that I am not capable of maintaining a long-term relationship? Or do I believe that I attract the wrong kind of people? And that's definitely going to influence my behavior. Okay, the second type of self-fulfilling prophecy is when my belief, or someone else's, influences your behavior. So this has been studied over and over and over again, and this is certainly where we get stereotyping, right? So if I believe this to be true about you, I can actually make it true about you because I send you all kinds of messages. And so we get that reinforcement of stereotyping. although stereotyping comes in a minute as well. We definitely see my belief influencing your behavior in coaching. So if the coach believes that you as an athlete are capable of success, it makes your success more likely. Does it guarantee? Does it mean that you'll bring home gold in the Olympics? No. Does it make it more likely? Absolutely. And the one that's been studied over and over and over again is teachers. So the famous study usually involves taking a brand new elementary school teacher and telling them, oh, you've got the gifted class this semester. And then they give them a really normal class, which means it has 2 or 3 gifted students in it. It means that the vast majority of the students are average and 2 or 3 students that have challenges, right? So they give them this absolutely normal class. What's fascinating about this is the relationship between self-fulfilling prophecies, this type of self-fulfilling prophecies, and IQ. So IQ, and there's lots of problems with IQ scores I'm not going to get into right now, but they've been determined to be relatively stable over time. So it's not about knowledge. It is a little bit. That's part of the problem with the test. But the tests are designed to test how quickly you think. And that doesn't change much over time. So they give this very normal class to this teacher that they have been convinced that they have given them a gifted class. And the teacher goes in there believing all of these students are gifted. And at the end of the year, all of those students show significant increases in their IQ scores. They show significant increases in confidence and the quality of work they're putting out. So other people's beliefs do influence our behavior in all kinds of ways. And let's just, for a minute, talk about the last thing we talked about in that self-concept cycle. So if you're with people who don't believe in the best version of you, it's a lot harder for you to be the best version of you. So maybe consider who you're spending a lot of time with. Okay, so the last one, I definitely consider it a type of self-fulfilling prophecy, but you can argue with me on that because it's debatable. It's when your belief influences your perception. So the things that I believe, and we've definitely seen this with social media news algorithms, right? You believe this and you show that belief by liking and reading and spending time on certain points of view, and the algorithms show you more of that point of view. So that's what you're going to see. That's what's out there. The one that has been really powerful to me is the studies are very clear. Since I was a kid, American society has gotten significantly less violent. It is significantly safer to live in America today than it was in the 70s. There is no question about it. The statistics, except for, I think, 2 little blips in there, have steadily gone down year after year. But violence makes the news. And so we hear about it, and especially in this world with the social media. So we have a 24-hour news cycle. So we're all instantly aware of all events that happen everywhere. We hear more about violence than we ever did before. And so we tend to perceive that our society is more violent and that we're at more risk than we actually are. And back when people got their news from TV, I know a long time ago, there was actually a predictive algorithm that could see how much TV news you watched and how violent you thought society was going to be based on those numbers, because our belief is going to influence our perception. So we're going to see and reinforce that cycle of what we think is truth. And finally, the isms. Racism, sexism, all of the other isms. If we believe these things, we're going to see examples of them. If you believe that there is someone who is superior or inferior, you're going to see examples of that, because those examples exist. They just may not be the way that that whole group of people is. In fact, it's unlikely that they're true. But it is what our experience has told us once, and then we find examples of it, and then we're blind to the examples that contradict it. So just be aware that your perception is your reality, and it determines how you act and react and interact, and it's not necessarily true. And I know a whole bunch of you could not wait to start on this commitment essay, and I know it's because it's worth a lot of points. You're going to have some time to work on it, and I'll give you time to revise it. So I wanted to throw it up here again so you could be reminded of what's in there. This is the time. If you've already written it, I want you to watch this part of the video and then go back and see if you want to make changes before I respond to what you wrote. This is worth a lot of points, so I want you to be thoughtful about what you write and give me some good stuff. For those of you that are doing this class for fun, I think this is a really good activity to write down what you're thinking, because that's one of the ways that we can hold ourselves accountable. So, what do you want out of, in this case, this course and your education? And I think it's really useful. I asked you in the earlier activity to write down what you, or to reflect on what you wanted out of those interactions, and knowing what your goals are helps you to achieve them. So, what do you want out of this course? And yes, I do mean besides transferable units. Although it can be that this is your path to the job that you want, and this is just merely an obstacle in that path, and that's okay. I think the more ways that you find that you want more stuff out of this class, the more satisfying your experience is going to be in this class. The next probably little paragraph that I want you to write is challenges you expect to encounter that you are willing to make public. So I do not need you to bleed for me. I do not need you to reveal your deepest, darkest, mushiest feelings. If you're saying, hey, I'm struggling with time management, or I'm struggling with the fact that there's so much reading and these videos are so long, that's fine. If you're, I have little kids in my household and it's hard to find time to do these things. Challenges that you're willing to share. I am very respectful of your privacy. You do not have to share things you don't want to share. But that you expect, because the way that I can support you best, the way that your classmates can support you best, the way that we can be a community together is by knowing what we need. Getting back to that demanding statement we talked about earlier. Ways that we can all help you to succeed. So is there something I could do that I'm not doing? Right now I am experimenting with how I post things in Canvas, and I'm seeing if updating the week to keep the noise and the modules down is going to be more useful, or if it's more useful for you to make everything a new post. So I'll look forward to your feedback on that. But if there are things that I can do to help you succeed, or there are things your classmates can do to help you succeed, speak up. That's the only way we know. And then finally, and I think this is the most important question, and I think it's not just for this class, but the one that you need to ask yourself about everything that you're spending time on. What are you willing to do to be successful? So what are you willing to do to be successful in this course? Be specific here with your plan for success, including how you will schedule study time and how you will participate. For those of you that are not doing this for units, that you're just doing this for fun, I want you to be thinking about the ways that you spend your time right now, and what changes are you willing to make in that in order to get the successes that you want. And the directions are, after you post a reply, please like the posts of classmates that resonate with you. So the posts, oh yeah, totally, that's an issue for me too. And then respond to at least 2 of them if you can. There's something you can help them with. We are not going to be that class that's like 300 words and then respond to 2 classmates by Thursday night with 500 words. I'm not going to do that. I don't have word counts right now. Don't want them. I want you to do this in a way that's useful for you and in a way that's authentic. So help me out here. Like I said, this is worth a lot of points, so do put some thought into it. And I would like it if you could try and get this done in the next 2 weeks. Okay, moving on. Social media. This is a new textbook chapter, and some of you, if you have really old textbooks, may not have this chapter in your textbooks. That's one of the reasons it is uploaded into Canvas. So we'll talk about, along with the reading that we've already done, and we'll review that in a minute. So social media. What are we going to talk about social media today? And I want to start off by talking about comparison. And if we get back to that self-concept cycle that we talked about in the last video, it's definitely one of the factors that social media highlights. So you can look at your friends' lives and, oh my gosh, look at how amazing they are and the fun things they do and how much their family loves them and their friends love them. And look at how exotic their lives are. One of my favorite news stories was an influencer who had posted that she was going on a vacation in Tahiti, I think. And instead she went to an IKEA store and used the IKEA backdrops in the little rooms they have there in IKEA, and she posted all of her Tahiti vacation pictures from the IKEA store in her hometown. So we definitely feel comparison. It's important to understand that that's not based on reality, and that even if I post every day or multiple times a day, I'm still cherry picking moments of my life that I want to share with you. And so if you're comparing your whole life, you know all the dirty details. Social media gives us that false sense of comparison. So be aware of that. And the anonymity and distance involved. Sometimes online stuff is anonymous and people say the most awful things. Holy cow. I am shocked at some of the things that I've seen on social media. Some things that aren't anonymous, but since you'd figure you don't know me and I'm not going to walk up to you in the street and punch you in the face, you might feel inclined to say it. And so understand that, A, I really want you to be mindful of the things you say on social media because they can get tracked back to you and they can have real world repercussions. But also to not, maybe not read comments, but also to not take comments super seriously. One person that I see videos of on social media is a professional jump roper, and he has really cool moves. I am kind of horrified if I ever look at the comments, though, because they are often just focused on his body. And I know that that's very common for women in social media, that they get lots of strangers making comments and sometimes really horrific things. So understand that that's part of social media, and that I encourage you to not participate in either saying or doing things that you don't want traced back to you. Also, not allowing yourself to have big impacts by the fact that other people can be assholes, right? Because among other things, social media does allow us to have connections. One of the things I love about my social media is that I get to see how people that I know other people that I know. And so I am often like, oh, it's so cool. You guys know each other. I would say I regularly have contact with students I might not have had in a class for 20 years. Definitely get to see more pictures of my grandkids and my kids going out and having adventures. I get to see those photographs. And that's wonderful. That's a way to stay in contact. It's one of the benefits of social media. And certainly we can feel really disconnected and alienated in the world. And so it is a good way to build community. Whether it's the fact that you like to garden and you want to talk to other gardeners, or just had my second knee replaced. And so I reached out to people on social media. I'm like, hey, this is my second knee replacement. I have some questions, not that I want information from my doctor, but people who've gone through this. And so those kinds of connections can be really cool. And it is certainly the global village that Marshall McLuhan envisioned in the 60s when he saw that we were finding ways to connect around the globe. So how much time do you spend on social media? And if you've taken an English class recently with Dr. Tischler, he does a deep dive into the time that people are spending on social media and the research about how that impacts them. Spoiler alert, the more time that you spend on social media, the more likely you are to suffer from depression. And the worse that depression gets. So I would encourage you to spend some time paying attention to how much time you spend on social media, being aware that it can be detrimental, that doom scrolling at 3 a.m. doesn't help you get back to sleep. Not that I have ever done that. That I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to encourage you as a class, and we'll talk about this probably not right away, but in a week or two, to take a 24-hour break from social media and just as much as possible disconnect from our electronics. Get out in nature and experience the world around you, because it is incredibly reinvigorating and it is emotionally and mentally healthy. So take a look at your calendar. So when I bring it up again, you can be thinking, is there a time that I could take a 24-hour break and only interact with people face to face? Take a break from electronics as much as possible. And when I think about this, I'm thinking about being out in nature. And a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to, one of our friends has a boat, took us out riding here on the island. And my husband had told him that one of my bucket wish items was to see dolphins in the wild. And he's like, yeah, I can't promise we're going to do that. We did. We spent half an hour with a mama dolphin and her baby, watching them, observing them, taking no pictures, because we were really experiencing the moment. Yeah. Abstractly, I would like to have video evidence, but I know that if any of us had been filming, we wouldn't have been experiencing, and that thought makes me very sad. Watching this mama dolphin throw fish up in the air, teaching her baby dolphin to catch them and eat them, was so incredible. It was just so amazing. And I will never forget that experience, and I don't think that my husband or my granddaughter will either. So I encourage you to think of a thing you could do, a way that you could spend some time out in nature. For some of you, that means being out in the snow. For some of you, it might mean waiting a little bit longer to be out in good weather. Here at the beach, I have a little bit more of an opportunity to do that. So take a look at your calendars. Let's have a conversation about this. Maybe I'll open up a chat box and we can talk about it. But I would really like to encourage you to plan that 24-hour break. Okay, tasks for this week. So I have a copy of just kind of that portion of the schedule of events for this class as a reminder. So let's talk about what's on there. So, commitment essay. Though it's on the tasks for this week's list, I would rather have you do it well than hurry. So if it's going to take you a week or two to do that, that's fine. Start the 35 trait list. Like I said, I want to schedule a time in about 10 days that we can get back to it. I did ask you already to revisit the earlier posts and comment on your classmates in 2 different places, so I hope that you do that. And chapter notes. So there's a lot of reading at the beginning of the semester. We have some breaks, but right now it's very reading heavy. So you've been assigned chapter 1, the first look. I told you how to read that one. Communication and identity, which is the chapter that we've been talking about this week. We just started talking about social media. So if you could get those 6 chapter notes done, don't spend hours and hours of time on them. These are just intended to be a quick dive into one tiny part of each one of the chapters. If you need help doing that, please reach out to me. I can do a quick Zoom, get you dialed in. It'll take us maybe 5 minutes if you're struggling to do that. So please reach out to me. So like I said, a first look. You should have done the first one with me, and the second one should have been done already. I don't think any of you have done that, though, so try and get that in there. Communication and identity is a chapter we're working on this week, as well as social media. And then if you're working ahead, and you can, because the chapter notes, that section in Canvas I have set up for chapter notes for you, you can work ahead. Next week is perception, and that's going to be a big week. And you can see, looking at the 10th, I don't have anything assigned there, so you got a little breathing room, and then we're starting on perception. And we're going to be on perception for probably a good week. So that wraps it up. I am so happy that you're on this journey with me. I hope that you're finding the information that I'm sharing with you useful. Those of you that are reading the textbook, I hope you're finding that useful and different than what I'm talking about here. This has been a challenge, and I have faith that we're going to get through it together. I love you all. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Bye.